Hello, and welcome again, Aldsidu, Old Saxon Heathens and Historical Germanic Heathens from all the Germanic tribes. Here we're going to discuss Thunar's Well, or Thor's Well. This is not Thor's Oak of the Chatti tribe, which neighbored the Saxons to the south. This is Thor's Well, or Thunar's Well, which was found in Hohensyburg, also called Syburg. Now, when I say the Saxons, I mean the Saxons in Saxony. I do not mean the Anglo-Frisian English people who were called Saxons by the Romans, and they adopted Saxon names like Sussex, Essex, and Wessex. And really, these are Latinizations, because in Old Saxon, it would be Süd Sassenland, Ost Sassenland, and West Sassenland. So these are two different peoples, the Anglo-Frisians who spoke Old English and the Old Saxons who spoke Old Saxon. And they were in two different areas. The Anglo-Frisians were in England and the Saxons were in Saxony, which is in northern Germany today. So if you see to the bottom here, a city called Dortmund in the southwestern part of Old Saxony, to the south of Dortmund along the Ruhr River where the Lenne comes into it, the Lenne River, or Lenne, that is where Hohensyburg was. And this is where Thor's Well was. Hohensyburg, or Syburg, is a Saxon Hillfort, and the well brought in water to Syburg, or Hohensyburg. And the well was essential because it was on the outskirts to control, because if you lose the well, you're going to lose the ability to have water, and therefore you're going to lose a siege, which happened. Now, the Saxon War started in 772 AD, and Hohensyburg was attacked first, and after Hohensyburg was attacked, or Syburg, the Irminsul at Eresburg was attacked next. And that order is very important. So that happened in 772 AD. Hohensyburg fell, then Eresburg fell, Thor's Well and the Irminsul were destroyed. So it was religious war from the outset. And, there was forced conversion as a part of it. And I'm going to share two quotes, but here's the first one from the Paderborn epic written around 800 AD. It praises terror as a means of conversion. What the contrary mind and perverse soul refuse to do with persuasion, let them leap to accomplish when compelled by fear. And here's a more poignant, the probably worst quote, or the best quote that illustrates the madman Charlemagne, the butcher of the Saxons. It's this quote taken from his own Royal Frankish Annals, his court records from the year 775, where Charlemagne was recorded as, he spends the winter at the villa of Querzy, and he decided to attack the treacherous and treaty-breaking tribe of the Saxons and to persist in this war until they were either defeated and forced to accept the Christian religion or be entirely exterminated. So that's pretty blunt, but that is what Charlemagne declared in the year 775. The Saxons were going to be forcefully converted, and they were going to accept the Christian religion, or they were going to be entirely exterminated. And this is the founder of the First Reich, and he is considered a hero today in Germany, which to me is totally hypocritical, considering a man who led the Third Reich looked at Charlemagne as his hero, and because that Reich lasted 1,000 years, he wanted his Reich to last for 1,000 years. So it's amazing to me, we can abolish the swastika in Germany today, but we can't abolish the cross or the church tax, which my uncle and aunt recently got out of paying in Germany. The First Reich was awful, and it was bent on genocide and the forceful conversion of not just the Saxons, but the Frisians and the Chatti and other peoples that Charlemagne brought into the church via the cross. The cross became a sword. So it's kind of a sad history, and it's really sad that Charlemagne is extolled as the father of Europe today, because the difference between him and Hitler is that he won his wars, and Hitler was, thank goodness, defeated. And to me, I look forward to the day when the cross as a symbol is gone from Europe and looked at as a symbol of hate, just like the other symbols of the Third Reich are. But back to what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Hoenn Seberg. And if I were to continue that same quote, because immediately after, accept the Christian religion or be entirely exterminated, the next sentence is literally this one. The pious and noble King Charles held an assembly at the village of Durin, and from there he launched a campaign into Saxony and captured the castle, which is really a hill fort, of Syburg. He restored the castle of Irminsul and came as far as the Weser at Braunsberg. So as I mentioned before, in 772, Charlemagne took out Hohensyburg or Syburg and Irminsul. The Saxons then retook Irminsul in 773, and they started, I assume, to rebuild the Irminsul area. They then decided to attack the area of Thor's Oak, not Thor's Well, of the Chatti. That was the second most holy site, though this is outside of Saxony. The Saxons had a pan-Germanic feeling, a unified feeling with other heathen tribes around them that, hey, you know, if our Irminsul was destroyed, the Chattis, Thor's Oak was destroyed, we're going to try to take it over. And in 773, they tried and they failed, and that's also mentioned in the Royal Frankish Annals. And in 774, they did go back and take their own Hohensyburg, and they recaptured it, and most scholars believe Wittikind was the leader of that successful campaign. So it was good that the Saxons were able to retake Irminsul in the Irminsul site and Thunar's Oak site, or Thunar's Well site. But in 775, as we see here, Charlemagne recaptured both Syburg and Irminsul in that order. And I say that specifically for a reason. He retook these cities in that order, and he restored. He technically did wipe out Saxon Hillforts in 772. He then built castles there before he left, or at least had them constructed by some people left behind. And in 775, he had to come back and demolish Saxon Hillforts, which destroyed his castles there. And that's when Syburg and Irminsul were conquered for the rest of the Saxon Wars. The Saxons never held that site again until after forced conversion. Now, I said before the order was important, that Hohensyburg was attacked and conquered first, and Irminsul, where the Irminsul is attacked and conquered second. Because the Saxons, we have a manuscript from 795 AD in the old Low Franconian tongue, of the Saxons having to denounce three gods in this order. I forsake all double works and words, Thunar and Woden and Sasnoth, and all demons which are their comrades. I note the order is important because I have a theory, and this is a theory, but obviously I think I'm right in my theory. But, you know, with Hohensyburg, the site for Thunar falling first, and then Woden and Sasnoth being mentioned next, which were the deities venerated most. Polytheists venerate all their deities, but you know, the Irminsul is named after Jormund, would be the Old Norse equivalent, which is a byname for Woden or Odin. So I do see that Thunar and Woden are named first in the baptismal vow for a reason, and I do think it goes with the destruction first of Thor's Oak and then the destruction of the Irminsul next. So here is from a museum in the area, a layout of the hill fort of Syburg, or Hohensyburg. And you can see down here, that's the Ruhr River. And the H's in Old Saxon are typically silent, like Sasnoth, the deity, or the Ruhr River, spelled R-U-H-R. These are diphthongs used by the Franks who were monks. They wrote with Latin letters of the runic Germanic languages, so they struggled with vowels, and they made all sorts of interesting diphthongs, and a lot of them exist in our modern English language today. But nonetheless, the Ruhr River is down here, and then we have a relatively steep slope with a lot more trees than what's in this rendition. Here today is a Denkmal to Wilhelm, the Kaiser, the founder of the nation of Germany in 1871. And over here is today a castle in ruins from the 12th and 13th century. A castle was built there, and today the ruins you can go visit. And there is a Reich memorial inside there as well. Now, today there's a parking lot up here, and Thor's Well is actually in this area. historically. And Charlemagne actually had to build a church with the Christian graveyard in that area as well, which is sad. And there's a casino up there today, by the way, which is interesting to say the least. So here's a picture of a gate at modern Hohensyburg. You can see the castle is there, the Wilhelm Denkmal is there, parking lots in here, Thor's Well, a church, is also on the grounds. Now this is me facing the Kaiser Denkmal. So this is the high slope that you can't really see. And you can see some trees starting to come up right underneath there. And you can see me wearing a Keep Thor and Thursday shirt with the Mjolnir, because if you're going to visit a holy site to Thor, let's bring some Thor gear and have a good feeling of reverence for this once great Saxon area. You can see a map there, and the Ruhr River is below. And you can see that we are 100 meters higher than where the Ruhr River is, because you can see the buildings in the background are significantly lower. So again, Frankish cavalry is not going to charge over a river and then up a hill filled with trees. So this was not the area that they attacked, but this was certainly the safest area within Hohensyburg. Now, as the rendition showed before, there was Hillfort has a wall all the way around it, and this is an artist rendition of that wall. And you can see that some of these planks go deep into the ground, and this is a very strong fortification, a typical Saxon fortification. Reinforcements would be here, and they can easily climb up to the wall, and when archers run out of arrows and need to reload, they can run back down and reload. So this is what the walls around Syburg or Hohensyburg looked like. Now Syburg, Hohensyburg today, I decided to take many pictures because, here's one area where the Franks, to conquer it, would have to do a cavalry charge up a hill, and here's former wall fortifications. And if you don't believe me, this is a better view where you can see that definitely a Hillfort wall used to be there. This was the side that the Saxons would run up, and this is the side that used to be a straight vertical wall that over time, obviously, it starts to round itself out more. And heck, even trees start to grow in some of these ramparts. And here's another view which, shows these ramparts today, how they kind of get rounded over time. And you can see that, reinforcements are going to come down to defend, and the Franks are going to have to get over this wall. And, the advantage of the Hillfort is you have height. Now here's the castle built in the 1200s, I believe, that was later destroyed. You can see that is a modern German helmet. The Reich put a monument in there, which wasn't obviously originally in the castle at Hohensyburg. And that is me in front of it. And there is a sign right there. I can give a close-up of, again, you see the map of the area. You see a picture on the top of the sign of what the castle used to look like. You can see its kind of fortifications and trees below and the Ruhr River. So kind of trying to give you an idea of why this area would have been a sacred site. And also, this is why I believe the Irminsul was in Eresburg, as Thor's Well was in Hohensyburg. It's easier to defend holy sites when they are surrounded by a Hillfort. And this is Thunar's well today. The well is behind this locked gate, and there is a business back there today. So unfortunately, I don't think archaeologists are going to get to go in there. But if you can see the stone right there, that looks like this. The year 799 is clearly in the inscription. Thunar, which is the modern High German word, because, when the Saxons were conquered, they would have to start speaking High German, and they did slowly over time. The Saxons spoke Old Saxon, and you can see the name of the well became Petersbrunnen, which is very interesting because the Saxon people when they lost Thor, they were forced to be replaced with St. Peter. So the well was renamed Petersbrunnen, from Thunarsbrunnen to Petersbrunnen. And this was done to kind of blot out Thor in their forced conversion. Naturally, Charlemagne builds a church on this site, and behind this wall here and behind the trees here are gravestones, all from the 15 and 1600s, and those dates are even chiseled in on them. And pictured there with me is a fellow heathen and also a fellow Saxon heathen and German archaeologist, Sven Nee, who gave me a tour of the site. And to get a tour of the site from an archaeologist is truly an amazing experience. So my son Jordan and I were really just immensely, to use the modern word, blessed to have an archaeologist give us a tour of the area and his expertise of the area and the history of the area. So it was just a tremendous day of education. Now, I said before, St. Peter was the replacement of the Saxon Thor. And it's amazing when the archaeological and literary evidence tie and they come together and form one history. Because often people say the archaeological and literary evidence doesn't tie, and often they don't because the victors write their version of history, so it's not going to tie. But in the 800s, the early 800s, around 830, a Saxon Gospel was written to try to convert the Saxons, because even after the Saxon Wars had ended, the Saxons wanted no part of the nonsense of Christianity. They rebelled in 841 through 842. It's called the Stalinga Rebellion, where they tried to restore the native heathenry in Saxony. And even as late as 1073, Adam of Bremen said that the sacred groves in Saxony were still in use by Saxon heathens of his time, and he was extremely alarmed by it. So forced conversion sometimes works, but it only works so far. You can't force people to accept a religion. But nonetheless, the Saxon Gospel, written around 830 AD, changed the biblical story, and it lines up with the archaeological evidence because it makes Simon Peter out to be Thor, a man of great strength. And in the biblical gospel, John outruns Peter to the tomb on resurrection morning. And in the Saxon gospel, it's changed that John barely beats Peter there to the empty tomb. And the only reason why Peter, according to the gospel, loses this race, and he barely loses, is because Peter is famed for his strength and is so strong, and a man of such immense muscle, like Thor, he can't be as fast as John. But hey, even despite his immense strength, he's just slightly slower. So the gospel part reads, John and Peter ran fast, and John the Good got there first, and he stood over the tomb, or the grave, until there immediately afterwards Simon Peter came, an earl famed for strength. And then he went into the sepulchre, or grave. So to me, this is pretty amazing that as a student of Old Saxon in my 21st year of studying Old Saxon now, and this translation here is mine. I put the runes on top because you should only have Old Saxon and runes. Not Latin letters, because it's Old Saxon, for goodness sakes. And the English below in red, and my notes below. But in closing, the Saxons had a great, they had multiple holy sites. So the Irminsul is remembered today because it had gold and silver, and it was a much quicker Frankish victory. Whereas reality for the victory at Hohensyburg, they had to win it with a long siege and bribing a Saxon noble to make him Duke of Syburg after Charlemagne won. If he gave information to help Charlemagne win, then he would become Duke of Syburg. And this Saxon traitor noble did that. He gave the location of the well. They were able to get the water. So Syburg fell. And unfortunately, when Thunar's well became in enemy hands, you could no longer get water. The access to that well was denied. They had to surrender. But nonetheless, we had a Saxon sacred holy site to Thunar. And how else to end a video by saying, Hell was through Thunar, which is a way to give praise to Thunar in Old Saxon, and hail as well the Old Saxon Heathens who fought and died to defend Saxon Heathenry, their culture, their language, their way of life, their faith, their Aldsidu, their old ways, and who fought for the glory of their ancestors and who died, and whose names we should sing as skalds today, or shops. We should praise them and their actions, and they should not be forgotten today. So hail the Saxon ancestors who fought and died, and hail Thunar,